All right, guys, I'm going to show you some tips for sewing FOE, some fold over elastic. I'm going to show you where I've gotten mine. I'm going to show you some stuff to avoid, and I'm going to show you how I do it on my machine. When I posted my stuff on Instagram and Facebook, I was blown away by the number of people who were scared of FOE or who had tried it once and never used it again, because it's easy. We can do this. So let's do it. All right, guys, so here is a variety of FOE or fold over elastic, and I'm going to show you some of the easy stuff and some of the more difficult stuff to use. First, I thought I'd show you where I get it. These are from Joann Fabrics, and you can tell that they were on sale because of the clearance sticker, and then they were like another 75% off. So I have so many of these packages. The great thing is that they're cheap in lots of colors. The not so great thing is it's only a yard, so I end up piecing together a lot of pieces of FOE or fold over elastic, and I'll show you how to do that too. So I have a lot of stuff from Joann's. I have a lot of stuff from the National City Swap Meet. They sell it, and it's very inexpensive. And then I also have a lot of basic colors from So Sassy Fabrics, and this, they sell it. I think once you start buying it in 10-yard chunks, they give you a break. I think it's $4.50 for 10 yards. So I bought 20 yards for $9. So it's super cheap. They have lots of different colors. They have lots of different kinds. This is great quality FOE. That's pretty much the three places I buy it. Either National City, So Sassy, or Joann's. Kinds that you want to use. These ones are great. If you can see on the front and on the back, they have that line in the middle, that ribbing. And when you fold it, it's very easy to fold, and it makes a very straight, neat fold. Maybe it's easier to see on the blue. So on the blue, you can see that line. You can fold it over, works super well. This, super fun, super sparkly. I think I got this on Etsy. It's also super scratchy, so I would never use it on underwear, but it's also missing that line in the middle. So I've never used this to wrap around something because it's itchy and because it does not have that line. But I put this like up the sides of leggings or down a sweatshirt arm or something like that. So it's super fun trim, but I would never use this as actual fold over elastic. This stuff works well, but you can see that it has these shiny dots like right on the center. That makes it less easy to use. So when you fold it, you're fighting against those dots because the dots are right on the side. So it still works, and I still use this stuff. It's just a little bit harder. Like, I wouldn't start with doing something like this. This stuff I bought at Joann's, super cute. But these little things are like rubber grippy stuff. So if you are trying to do this the first time you ever use FOE, you are not gonna like it because this stuff is gonna grip to your presser foot. It's also gonna grip to the bottom of your machine. It's gonna be really hard to deal with. So if it's the first time for you for FOE, I would stick with something simple, nothing with sparkles, and definitely with the ribbing line down the middle. And I would use something like this. All right, guys, so choosing your fabric that you're going to use is just as important as choosing what kind of FOE you're going to use. For beginners, I would definitely use something that's stable. These fabrics that I use, these were both cotton lycra knits. They're, I would say, medium weight, and they don't curl at the edges when you pull on them. So this is what I'm going to show you with today. This is just a piece of like gymnastics lycra. You can see it looks like this. If I pull, it will curl, but it doesn't really curl very badly, and it goes back into being a straight piece of fabric. This fabric, this is an ITY. I would definitely not use this for FOE, especially as a beginner, because it's super thin fabric, and just looking at it, like, it starts to curl, and this would be super hard to get a good edge on for if you're trying to do FOE. So this fabric I probably would not use. It would be really difficult, and as a beginner I definitely wouldn't use something like this. I would use a thicker fabric, something, a cotton knit or a polyester knit. that's what I would start with. Once you have your fabric and you've got your pieces together, you want to make sure that all of your seams, so if I'm going to put FOE along this edge, you want to make sure that everything is smooth. So what I'm going to do, this has just got a serger thread and then obviously it's uneven, is I'm going to make this even just with my rotary cutter. So that it's a nice smooth edge. Obviously, if this was an actual pattern, I would get things closer to the edge because I cut off quite a bit, right? So you want to make sure it's nice and close. And you want to minimize bulky seams. If this was a regular seam, you'd want to minimize and cut away any seam allowances as much as you could. When I'm using a certain amount of FOE, if I'm not putting it in the round, so sometimes you put it in the round and you stitch it, right? If I'm just measuring off a certain amount of FOE, I will always extend it by about 3/4 of an inch or an inch, and that just gives me something to hold on to. So I'll do my measurements, I'll put my line at the beginning, and I'll put my line at the end, and then when I'm sewing, this will be what I hold on to. This will be behind my presser foot, and I will start stitching here, but I'll be able to have something to hold on to. So this is one tip for making your FOE a little bit easier to handle, and so it doesn't get sucked into your sewing machine. If you are having to add pieces together, like I will often add pieces because like I said, this Joann stuff is great, but if I didn't link sections, it would take me 3 of these packages to make a pair of the Julia underwear. So often I will join the pieces for the waistband. So if you do have to join pieces, it's pretty easy. I just straight stitch it just like that. I cut off the seam allowance, so it's about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch. But if I just leave the seam allowance like this and I fold it, I end up with these weird little tags at the bottom. So that's not a good look. You don't want that. So if you are going to join them and fold them over, I always trim them. So I cut off this and I cut off this, and then you're left with this. When you fold it over, it's a clean finish and it looks good. All right, so now let's go to the sewing machine and I will show you guys how I will put this on. I'm gonna use this blue stuff, and like I said, I'm going to use this, and I'll use some sort of bright contrasting thread so you guys can easily see what I'm doing. All right guys, so here's how I sew it. I use a center edge foot. So I think this is primarily a quilting foot for like stitching in the ditch. I don't really know why I have it. I've just always had it. I don't think it came with my machine. I bought it after the fact, but I love this foot and I use it for a lot of different things. So what happens is this little piece stays down in the seam and you're able to zigzag or do decorative stitches over it or just stitch in the ditch. It's a super helpful foot to have. The way I use it is I butt my FOE up to this center guide foot, and then my zigzag goes on the right hand side back and forth and leaves this side empty. So my zigzag just goes on the right hand side, and I sort of use that to push my FOE against. This will be the edge with the folded FOE on it. This will be your garment's edge. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So this goes on here. Let me show you the stitch that I use. I just use a regular zigzag on my machine. I don't change the width or the length of the stitch, but here's what I do change. I change where it goes. So if you look over here, you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to change the zigzag so that it is to the right as far as it will go. So again, my zigzag only is going to happen on the right hand side, not on the left hand side. So if we go back here, you can see my needle is a little bit to the left. And remember, this is my piece of fabric. This is my FOE, and remember I marked on it earlier, so that's what this purple mark is. I'm going to start stitching up here, and then my fabric is going to start right there. So this just gives you a little something to grab onto. Here you can really see that ribbing in the middle. That's what makes it really easy to fold. So the beginning is sort of the most difficult, right? I'm going to line up this mark with the top of my fabric. And I'm going to butt this up with my center edge foot. So I'm going to take just a couple stitches here. And you can see it's just barely hitting the edge of the FOE like this. I want to double check and make sure that this isn't folded, and you can see that it is folded in there. So I want to make sure and flatten it. I want to make sure and line it up. The fabric lines up with that rib in the middle that you can see. And this is especially hard right now because I'm trying to do this with the camera right in front of me. So I'm sewing via camera right now. So again, this isn't exactly lined up, but if I had more hands and less camera, this would be easier. So this part in the back, remember we made it long so I can grab onto that. I'm going to butt up the edge of the FOE to the center edge. I'm going to go nice and slow. And then as you're working, you just kind of go through, line this up again. Pull it out a little bit so it doesn't fold, push it in a little bit to line it up. Same thing. And this center edge foot really keeps the FOE in one spot. I've tried to do this without that, and it's really difficult. So you can see that I'm coming up to my seam right here. So my seam, remember, I cut it so it's nice and smooth. When you go over that, you just want to be a little bit more cautious, a little slower. And as you're sewing, you can feel this right here. You'll be able to feel if it's folded up and bunched in here, or if it's not where it should be, if it's not against the crease. There's my seam. Again, I want to just put it against the center of the FOE, kind of push this in. Here's my seam. I want to make sure that it feeds well, so I might even pull a little bit on the back of my FOE. And there you go, it's pretty easy. Obviously it's harder if you're going on curves or if you are using difficult FOE. This is what it looks like on the front. So you can see those stitches are right against the edge. Obviously, if it was the same color, you wouldn't even notice them. This is the back. So same thing, they're right on the edge. You've got a beautiful finish here. And here you go. This is what it looks like. This is that seam right there, so you can tell it looks great. That's the back. Looks fabulous. See, I told you we could do this. It's super easy. There's my line where I started. Obviously, if this is a loop of FOE, then you'd just have some seams to go over. But really, it's not any harder than if there are no seams. So let me know if you have any questions, especially about tips or problems that you're having. It really is pretty easy.